Hello there. I'm Brenda Stone,
And I'm Jake Burkhalter.
and we are here to talk about the new law for Texas notaries regarding remotely ink signed notarization of tangible documents. This law goes into effect on the 1st of January, but we're going to talk today. Well, Jake is going to explain to you today a lot more of the detail than we did in episode 1 that will, and you should be able to tell that this is going to take some preparation to get ready for it. So Jake, I'm going to let you have it now.
All right. Well, welcome to episode 2. This needs to be attention grabbing for anyone that holds a both traditional and an online commission in Texas. So if you're an attorney, escrow officer, loan officer, paralegal, whichever industry you're in, this is going to affect all of us. Before we move forward, just a quick note that this is our interpretation as of today, as the law has been proposed. The administrative code, section 87, will likely be published sometime last quarter, hopefully, of this year, where Secretary of State will put their spin, interpretation, and possibly a few more procedural requirements. So as we do this today, we're not attorneys, we're just two seasoned commission notaries here in Texas. This kind of brings back bittersweet memories of RIN when it came out. There was no guidelines. We actually had no rules until I believe it was January the following year. So Brenda and I decided to jump into this because it needs to be known. It's a great marketing opportunity for some folks that use their commission for income, but also for attorneys and title companies. When you prepare your documents, there's actually promulgated verbiage that you actually have to have. So again, join us. We're glad you're here. Let's move forward. So exactly what is a remote ink signed notarization? When the signer and the online notary are going to be in the same audio video, much like last time, the notary actually observes them signing the document using an actual ink pen. So it's not electronically done. It's actually, again, traditional. The documents are then sent to the notary, who will sign with ink and use their inked seal. So again, we're stripping all electronic signatures and seals. Now on this slide, notice the word is online notary. Remote ink sign notarization, RIN, as we commonly know it, is only going to be performed by an online notary. So if you have your traditional notary commission, you will not be able to do this. If you ever wanted to get your feet wet into getting your online commission, this is kind of a nice bridge to get there. So that might be something you'll want to consider. Brenda and I were kind of figuring out, when this was created, who does this really benefit? We understand that TLTA had a strong favoring for this, as well as many of the banking associations. So we kind of put our heads together, and I'm going to kind of go out of order here. But the first and foremost is this opens doors for estate planning documents. So if you're a doc prep attorney that handles estate preparation, as we understand it, we were restricted to notarizing wills using online notarial acts, rather than amend the estates codes and a few other regulatory sections of our laws. This actually amended the Business Commerce Code, the Business Commerce Code restricted the use of an online signature to execute a will, which pretty much killed a RIN, right? So now with the changes into the government code, this gives that life. So this will help a lot of people who are traveling abroad, maybe can't go to an attorney's office, all the way around. That's just a good thing for citizens of Texas. The other thing I think was a showstopper is a lot of lenders still do not favor RIN, whether it's for investor purposes, uncharted waters for them. This still allows everything to be done in the traditional form, where the end result is the documents get to the lender with the collateral package that has the wet signature and the wet seals. The difference is, rather than notary being in person, so personal appearance, will be adopted to where it's done by a two-way video and audio communication. And the last one is any document that traditionally will only allow a wet signature. A lot of DMV documents, or maybe just promulgated forms from the state, different, health codes, whatever the case may be. This kind of opens the door for that purpose as well. Again, as I mentioned earlier, Chapter 87 has not been modified yet. Usually it's trailing because Secretary of State has to implement many different procedures, how they will interpret it. That way they could police things if there's any type of formal complaint, how they'll handle those. So we kind of have to wait for them to release that really before we can do this. So on January 1st, if we don't see that, my personal opinion is to hesitate and do not do any of this type of notarial procedure or act until you actually see 87 released with permanent guidelines. Let's compare the old RIN versus the new RIN. The old, again, had a shelf life. The new RIN is permanent. It's actually law. The notary public must be an online notary, as previously mentioned. In the past, a traditional notary or any notary really in Texas were able to do this. The principle, as we understand it, we did not find a law that states the contrary, does not have to be in Texas, whereas pandemic RIN, the principle, as well as the notary, had to be in Texas. Now, of course, notaries, regardless, will always have to be in Texas for any and all Texas notarial acts. The principal must go through the credentialing process, which was not required previously. So this is where you have the elements of RON. The signer does go through the knowledge-based authentication process, so they still have to meet the requirements. They have to have a valid credential that's satisfactory. They have to have at least enough credit history. I like to say on my templates, 2 to 5 years of some credit use. That way, when it asks or extracts the data, they'll have enough to pull. And then they have to upload their photo for the credential analysis. So they do have to be in possession of the original and present that to the notary on camera as well. Before, there was really nothing formal except for the certificate. We altered it a little bit. A lot of county clerks, when I did a few of these, would reject them because they didn't understand that the language was within the body of the certificate. Well, now we have it promulgated. I'll say promulgated. It has to be almost substantially similar. But this statement right here is either going to be within the document, or commonly I expect to see a lot of people attach it. And basically, this is the principle. They're signing stating they declare under penalty of perjury that the document which this declaration is a part or to which it is attached is the same document on which the name of the online notary they met with performed an online notarization and before whom I appeared by means of a two-way video and audio conference technology on that date. I'm going to jump ahead of here a little bit, but all of this goes retroactive to this date when the notary and the principal met. So hold that thought. Not only do they have to sign on camera, but they must physically display that tangible document to the notary and their webcam. My recommendation is pan the whole document from the first page to the last page, any initials, every signature. That way, for the notary's video, we have to compare that when the document comes back, that document that we received is indeed the same instrument that was presented through the audio and video technology. Then our notarial certificates, and this was earlier I mentioned that if you're a traditional notary or a RON notary, or if you do this as RIN, it's going to change. So in the notarial certificate, if the signature is tangible or electronic, we must notate that. And I imagine Secretary of State will probably release new sample forms. So also be on the lookout for that. And it might be a checkbox form. It might just say either or. But again, ideally, Secretary of State or the law says, so long as you substantially, or the language rather, substantially similar, then we should be okay. And then the language that we do have to add states that I, name of the notary, witnessed by means of a video and audio conference technology, the name of the principal, signed the attached document and declaration on the same date you previously met them with. So as far as procedural steps, this is just a nutshell. So again, this could all change or be enhanced. The first one is you want to limit the showstoppers. Does your signer or the principal meet the eligibility requirements for knowledge-based authentication and credential analysis? You want to make sure they pass that, because if they don't, then you really kind of at a stop, and you have to think of either in-person notarization, or if they're traveling abroad, alternative steps if you're allowed to use a credible witness, or if they go to a consulate, whatever the case may be, you're going to have to start looking in plan B, C, and D. You also want to make sure that they have a computer, because phones usually do not work. This is mainly a platform stipulation, but now with the signers having to show the documents, a phone's just too impossible. It's shaky. They have to hold it. If they're by themselves, it's too much of a challenge where it really could jeopardize the whole notarization. So our recommendation is they need an actual webcam that reasonably focuses, and it's, a decent webcam. It doesn't have to be too expensive, but we don't want one that's too blurry. Also, make sure that the appropriate certificate language is in the notarial certificate, and confirm that their declaration that they sign is included in the document. They must sign the document in the presence of the online notary during the audio video conference. Those of you familiar with the acknowledgments, technically they could sign that outside of our presence, but during the notarial ceremonies, they actually state that they did sign that. It's their genuine signature for all purposes, et cetera, et cetera. Well, the law now says that they must sign it in our presence. There is no gray area of that. So, as I understand it, in the Notarial Act, they all sign them, jurat, acknowledgement, whatever it may be, must be in the presence of the notary through the audio and video communication. The principal must add our name as the notary to the declaration, unless it's attorney drafted or the title company, someone already does that. But we have to make sure in that prior slide that the actual notary that did this or started part A with the signers is addressed in that declaration and certificate. And again, the principal must display the instrument to the online notary as well as the notary certificate. And we have to actually make sure that when they point out that certificate, that they're aware of it being an acknowledgement or a jurat. That way, when we get the original back, we can make sure that it's still the same genuine and intent of the document preparation. All right, the principal, and this is a big also showstopper, the next few are, they must send the document with the attached or included principal declaration and the notarial certificate to the notary no later than the third calendar day after signing. When we scouted the law, it did not state anything about a calendar or a business day. So we're going to assume it means calendar day. Secretary of State may change that to business. For all intents and purposes, let's just stick with calendar day. Then, once the notary receives the document, the law states that the notary has to have that in their possession no later than the 10th day. So they have 3 days to send it, and then up to 10 days from when they send it, but from the first part of the meeting, 10-day rule to receive it. It really should be, well, let me back up. The notary is going to have to police that. Okay, so if you're on the receiving end, you're notarizing this, you likely will need to go to the carrier's website, whether it's the post office, the UPS, or the FedEx, and you're going to have to see when it was in their care. If the signer dropped it off on the 4th, 5th, or 6th day, there's no allowance in the law. That notarization process has to start all over again. And the same thing with you receiving it. If you receive it on the 11th, 12th, or 13th day, same thing, it has to start all over again. I think 10 days is a reasonable period, especially if the signers are international. With DHL and FedEx, usually it might take 3, 4, or 5 days. So I think 10 calendar days is still a stable thing, not to cause a panic. And as Brenda had mentioned earlier and on the slide, she's the typist and the brains behind all the verbiage here. We'll need to wait until the Texas Administrative Code 87 comes out to really make sure that what consequences will exist if these restrictions are not met. But for now, again, we recommend to keep this in your journal. So when you do print out the carriers, the tracking, the timestamps, I think it's a recommendation to go ahead and put that with your journal records, because if you are ever questioned, how did you prove that those were followed, that would be your evidence. Then the online notary is going to need to reasonably confirm that the same document they received is the same one that was presented by reviewing their video again. At that point, the signer is not present. That was a one-time thing in the beginning. So this all happens in a trailing process. Then the online notary executes the notarial certificate with an ink seal and ink signature. Then you must state in your online journal, or however you have your journal, that it's a remotely ink signed and notarized tangible document. That's another key word. You must mention it was a tangible document, because that's RIN. If it was an electronic document, that's completely raw. So again, we're focused on a RIN for this episode. Then, of course, you'll return the document to the appropriate party. That's the last slide. Let me go ahead, Brenda, if you don't mind, I'm going to stop sharing so we can put our pretty faces on here. There we go. So just in conversation, I think this opens a lot of doors for traditional notaries that want to step up. To kind of recap, to go ahead and get their online commission, it's $50, and it's immediate once you get your electronic seal and you get your digital certificate. Now, you won't be using those for RIN, but you still have to at least be in possession of them to even get your online commission. So if there's some confusion in that, put your question in the comments. We can address that and elaborate. For title companies, I think this opens the door for people that might have a disability. They can't travel to you. This does not modify any home equity guidelines. There was a bill that we hoped would expand that a little bit, but that did not pass. So for anyone that's doing a home equity transaction, that still has to be, cannot be done by RIN, has to be done actually at the proper venue. And I think that's pretty much what I wanted to follow up with. Brenda, is there anything you want to add? You're on mute, sorry. If I put you on mute, my apology.
No, I did it because you're going to see in the video that my dog was in here carrying on. And so anyway, we're just at home though, just doing our thing here in my living room. But I just think it's important to remember that the Secretary of State will issue guidelines on this, just like they did on RON. I want to mention again that that this law does change our RON laws. We have to start putting in our certificates how the whether it was a tangible document with a ink signature, whatever the verbiage was there that we put earlier. And the only other thing I would say about this law is, if you'll recall, the same bill had a little blurb in there about oaths of office or whatever that are swearing people in, is what it sounded like. And we'll probably do another video on that. So I just wanted to get that in, that bill, was it 1780, the bill at 1780 that had to do with this, with RIN, also mentioned that we're probably going to be able to swear in folks that are in the courtroom using an online notary. So that's kind of neat. But we'll have to wait until the Secretary of State goes through updating TAC and gives us a little more information. TAC 87, I should say. But other than that, hopefully y'all did not notice we're wearing the same clothes we did in episode 1, because we made a conscious decision to not go change clothes and to go ahead and record episode 2 at the same afternoon. So that's really it. And comments, subscribe please, so that we can get more good content out for you, and encourage us, because we're on fire to get the word out about what's right and wrong in the notary community. So
absolutely. And please do subscribe and like the video. That way we know that we have an audience that likes this information. But also, this is ever changing, uncharted waters for everyone. I mean, no one can do this right now until January. So as pieces come out, we learn more, we'll do more videos. And once you're subscribed, you'll get the front row ticket to know there's a new episode out. And again, thank you for joining us from our living room and our kitchen. We're doing a whole new approach to this. We took all the bells and whistles and stripped it down. We like the hometown feel. especially to get this information and content out to you as soon as possible. That way you can make the appropriate moves if you need to increase your commission, or if you prepare documents in the real estate arena, or even estate planning. So you heard it here first. We appreciate your time, and we look forward to seeing you in episode 3. Take care.
Thank you. Goodbye.